Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, this is another recording on the topic Creditors Reconciliation. In this question, out of 19 marks, the marks that were allocated, we are provided with the information that says the information for February 2004 was provided below, and it relates to the books of Monday's corner. So on Monday, this business is always there. And we also can say that this is a ledger account called Creditors Control Account. And if you remember from the Debtors Control Account that I recorded, we know that it was also prepared by inexperienced bookkeeper. And this bookkeeper made errors and mistakes in terms of recording. So we as students who have graduated to this institution, we are very knowledgeable to help this bookkeeper. And definitely this bookkeeper graduated in a no-name university. That's why he can't even do the creditors reconciliation, the basics of bookkeeping. Now, I also would like to highlight the fact that if the books were prepared by inexperienced bookkeeper, it is very likely that there are errors that are made on the transactions that are already recorded. So we need to check if these transactions were recorded on the correct side or not. We know that because this is creditors account, we know that is a liability, and liabilities increase on the credit side and they decrease on the debit side. So we are expecting an increase on this side whenever we buy on credit, because creditors control, or a journal called Creditors Journal, is a journal where we buy on credit. And whenever we buy on credit, our liabilities will increase on the credit side. Then it's likely to happen that we are going to pay our creditors. So when we pay our creditors, they will decrease on the debit side. Or when there's a return of inventory back to our creditors, we are likely to record that on the debit side, which is your creditors allowance journal total gets to be recorded on the debit side of this ledger account. So that is what we will be looking for. And then we'll do the analysis of this account before we begin. But I can also foresee that this is bank and discount. Bank and discount indicate that money was paid, and this comes from a cash payment journal. So that means we have paid our creditors and this amount of 30,800 is the amount that come from the creditors control column of the cash payment journal. Why I'm saying so is because it said bank and discount. So if the discount is included, therefore the 30,800 is the amount that include the discount. I partly emphasize that in the debtors journal that I did in another recording. We have our total returns. Then our total returns, they are sitting as 4,800. Returns, they are fine. When we return goods, they get to be recorded on the debit side. Similarly with the previous one, when we pay our creditors, this gets to be recorded on the debit side. So these two entries, they are recorded on the correct side. And I also assume that the amounts are correct. Then we have journal credits. Remember, journal credits is supposed to be on the credit side, not on the debit side. So now that journal credits will have to be transferred to the credit side of the creditors journal. So this is one of the mistakes that have been made by this inexperienced bookkeeper. Then after we look on the credit side, we have our balance brought down. Remember, this is a liability account, and the balance brought down of a liability is always on the credit side. So this is also correct. Then we have total purchases. Our total purchases are 48,400. And we know that when we buy inventory, we buy it on credit under the creditors journal. So the purchases, they are correct. They are from the creditors journal. So that means these are the purchases that were made on credit. So that one is on the correct side, increasing our liabilities. We then after have journal debits, which is from the general journal, similar with the other journal credits that we needed to transfer. The minute is a journal debit, that means it must be on the debit side. So now that will go to the debit side. So the 450 was also recorded on the incorrect side. Obviously, we understand that this bookkeeper is inexperienced and is a graduate from a no-name university. So we are correcting this graduate or this inexperienced bookkeeper, though we are doing our second year. Then after all is sorted, then we will be first correcting the existing ledger account before we look at the adjustments or the additional information that is provided at our disposal. And you can say that we have roughly almost 10 entries that we need to take into account in reconciling the mistakes of this inexperienced bookkeeper. Now I will start with the ledger account, which is the creditors control ledger account. Then after I will then go to the list of creditors. I've already done it for us, list of creditors or creditors list with the debit and the credit. Also note that creditors control is a liability. They decrease on the debit side, they increase on the credit side. And also on the ledger account, because creditors control is a liability, liabilities increase on the credit side, they decrease on the debit side. So please be mindful of that. I always highlight that all the time when I record in these entries. Therefore, now we start with the opening balance of 8,330 Rand on the credit side. Then we have our balance, and we have seen that the balance is on the correct side. 8,380 Rand is our opening balance. Then we must record our bank plus discount, and we were happy with our bank and discount, that our bank and discount was 30,800 if I still remember correctly, but I will do verify that. We have our 30,000 where we paid our creditors, and that is the evidence in the cash payment journal. And obviously when we pay our creditors, they must decrease on the debit side. That is where they decrease. There is the indication of the minus. Then remember, I'm opening brackets here because I am possibly expecting that there will be another bank and discount during the year or during the period of the correction this month. Then we have total returns. So we're happy that returns belongs to the debit side. So now we can just record this one and say total returns. Total returns 4,800. In case there will also be another return that will be made during the year, could be a plus or a minus, we'll deal with that. Then we look at what we also needed to do. We said journal credits belongs to the credit side. So let us transfer the journal credits to the credit side. The minute it says credits, it goes to the credit side. The amount of this journal credits is 580 rands. It is 580 rands. Let us open brackets in here and say 580. Remember, under general credits, there is a possible interest that must be charged in the account of a creditor. That is the normal one. The interest that must be charged in the account of the creditor will be added here under the general credits if if there is interest that need to be charged. So I'll still leave that one open. Then now we are done with the debit side. Don't worry about the balance. We will reconcile the balance. This balance is incorrect. This 21,000. Why it is incorrect? Because it is not aligned with the total list of balance of creditors at the same period. We have 22,148 under our list of creditors, of which our list of creditors supposed to be the same as our creditors control, because creditors control will record all the creditors under one account, and a list of creditors will record them separately. So we can see that these two are not aligned. So that is what our agenda is about, reconciling these two. Then we have our total purchases coming from the creditors journal, and this is on the right side. We can just write it as is, total purchases. Our total purchases being 48,400. And I will also take note of that total creditors or purchases. If there's a purchase that was recorded incorrectly, I think you remember in the previous recording where purchase was recorded incorrectly, instead of maybe a purchase, it was recorded as a payment. So the correction of that will also be dealt in this entry, where then we record the amount of the purchase correctly, or reducing our purchases. Either the amount was overstated or so. It's normally when it's overstated, we will be adjusting our purchases in there. If we recorded more than we're supposed to have recorded under our purchases. Now we leave it like that so far. We also have noted that there is a general debit that is on the credit side, and that is 450. General debit must be on the debit side, as it says general debit. So now we record the general debit on the debit side. We record the general debit on the debit side. General debits, and our general debits, we have seen that it is an amount of 450. We have an amount of 450 rands. There could be another one that we might need to record, but this is the only one that we have so far. Then now we go to the next entry. We look at the next entry, then we record accordingly. The next entry, I think we are done with the ledger account analysis of the errors that were made in the ledger account. So now from here, we then can go to our individual adjustments. Our individual adjustments or additional information says the list of creditors total is 22,148. Therefore, now that means under our list of creditors, we have a balance. Remember, creditors are liabilities. So the balance will be on the credit side, 22,148 rands on the credit side, because liabilities increase on the credit side. So the opening balance of a liability will always be on the credit side, not on the debit side. Then after we now from number 2, we deal with errors from the first error to the last error. I normally always prefer to go to the requirements, but we already know that we are required to prepare or to correct the creditors control account and reconcile the creditors control account with the total list of creditors ledger for the month of February 2024. So we are required to do the same requirement that I've already begun to do. It says a cash refund of 225 Rand from Tabang entered in the cash receipt journal has only been posted in Tabang's account in the creditors ledger. The minute something is posted in the account of the creditor, which in this case the creditors ledger, that means it was recorded in the list of creditors. So our list of creditors were recorded correctly. So we are only dealing now with the creditors control where this refund was not recorded. I am tempted this time around to explain further what does this refund mean, why this refund goes to the credit side of the creditors control ledger account, because this will be recorded on the credit side and we are going to say bank. But now I want to take you a bit more detail. You can apply the same principle when it comes to the debtors control reconciliation, where we reconcile debtors control with the list of debtors. So I just want to explain this in details. Now remember, we previously bought inventory on credit from our supplier. And I just want to be very specific of the name of the supplier. The name of the supplier is Tabang. A cash refund of 225 from Tabang. Remember, Tabang is a supplier in this case. Then if Tabang is a supplier, therefore Tabang is a creditor. So Tabang is a creditor. So now what does this mean? Remember, this means that in the account of Tabang, just want to open the account of Tabang, which increases on the credit side and decreases on the debit side. This is a liability, the list of the creditor. Now, what does this mean? It means we bought something on credit from Tabang. When we bought it on credit, we credited purchases. We would have said purchases because we bought on credit. We would have said purchases because we bought on credit. Purchases 225 Rand. Then we have the inventory that we bought on credit from them. So we have increased their account, meaning we have increased the account of our liabilities on the credit side, 225 Rand. That one was done. A couple of days passed by, a month passed by, or a week passed by. Then we made a payment for the inventory that we bought on credit. We made a payment. Then now, after we made the payment, on the debit side, we decrease our supplier because we have paid our supplier. And whenever we pay our supplier, we have to decrease the account of the supplier or the account of the creditor. So now in this account, we had 0. We close off this account because we paid the creditor. Then after now, we return the product. Why will we return a product after a month or two? It's because some products, if you remember, there are products that have a warranty of 3 months or 6 months or a year. Then if there's a default or a problem with the product, we return it back to the supplier. Then now in this case, we made a return to the supplier, but the supplier does not have the inventory anymore. We are returning the product. And we know that when we return before the payment, returns are recorded on the debit side. If we made a return before this payment, let's assume that there was no payment. If we did not pay and we made a return and our supplier accept the return, this was going to be recorded as 225 as a return. But we were happy with the product for the first month or for the first couple of weeks or months. then after we made the payment for the product we bought on credit. So hence the first thing that starts is the bank, not the return, because we bought, then after we use the product or we sold the product to a customer. That is the very likely approach. We sold to the customer and the customer was happy. After some month, we paid the supplier. Then now the product is, we are not happy with the product. Either the customer we sold to is not happy, the customer returned the product to us, and we return it back to the supplier. Now, after the payment was made, we are returning now. Then when we return, the supplier says, we no longer have another version of this product. We can't do an exchange now so that our account remains the same, because the customer we have already paid as a customer. So the supplier no longer now has this product, and we are returning the product. Then when we return the product, now the supplier will have to give us back our 225 rands that we have already paid, because we paid for this product. Though we bought it on credit previously, this was from the Creditors Journal, if you remember, because we bought on credit. So though we bought on credit before, we paid for the product. And because we paid, when we return and they can't give us another substitute, they need to pay us back the money. So now when they pay us back the money, obviously this will go to the credit side. They are paying us back the money. Then after, our account will then be increasing by an amount of 225 rands, because they are paying us back the money. So that is why you will see that there is 225 rands that the supplier is paying us, which now under the creditor's control, it will be recorded on the credit side, same as if it were to be recorded in the list of creditor. Now it's the same thing if you write the name of the creditor or you record it under creditor's control. It's the same thing. When we buy on credit, our creditor's control increased in here, and this was recorded as purchases. Then when we paid them, they recorded on this side 225, and this was bank. Now they are paying us back. Now when they pay us back, therefore now this will go to the credit side as this 225. They are cancelling the amount that they received. Remember, they are cancelling the 225 they received, because now we are saying no guys, you don't have the product and we are not happy with the product. That is why now bank will be here. It's a refund of the amount we paid, because they don't have a substitute product. Therefore now they refund us for the amount we have paid for this product. So that is what now we are literally referring to when we refer to this refund. That is why you see this refund sitting on the credit side of the creditor's control, and a refund in the debtor's control ledger account. When we do the reconciliation of debtors, the refund goes to the debit side in there. So I hope I have emphasized this one and given all the details that are necessary. Then we go to, and remember they said that this was entered correctly in the cash receipt journal. Remember, we have received the money from our supplier. So now the amount we received from the supplier in the cash receipt journal, it was correctly recorded. It was entered in the cash receipt journal, has only been posted in the account of the customer. It was only posted in the account of the customer, but not in the cash receipt journal. And we know that if the journal is not recorded, then we correct in the Creditors Ledger. Then we come now to the next entry. It says the amount of goods bought from Baldwin suppliers. The amount of goods bought from Baldwin suppliers. We bought something from Baldwin Suppliers and Sons was incorrectly recorded as 6,750 in the books. The correct amount that appear in the invoice is 6,570. So we recorded 6,750 instead of 6,570. Remember, this is the inventory that was purchased, and I'm looking for this term, the correct amount in the invoice. When we speak of the invoice under creditors reconciliation, we know that this is credit purchases. Invoice, that means it is credit purchases. We bought on credit. So we bought on credit and we recorded 6,750, and the amount is recorded on the correct side, meaning the amount is recorded on the credit side under our purchases. And we recorded 6,750 instead of 6,570. That means now 180 Rand indicate that our purchases are overstated in other terms, because we're supposed to record our credit purchases as 6,570. But the correct amount on the invoice, the correct amount that appears on the invoice is 6,570. That means our purchases are overstated. The amount of the purchases of 48,800 are overstated by 180 rands. So that is why now this becomes a minus. It is similar with the, it's a deduction for this one, 48,400 minus 180 Rand will give us the amount of the total purchases after the adjustment. Then it gets to 48,220 rands. So that is how we deal with the purchases. If they are overstated, we decrease on the side on the total of the credit purchases in there, and we indicate this as a minus. Please be mindful of this. We don't record it on the debit side. Then after we have our number 3 that says, just want to verify if we have captured it in the list of creditors. There is no specification that it was captured in the list of creditors. So in other words, this must be corrected in all of our books. So in our list of creditors, we also need to record Baldwin and Son and Sons. We are now reducing in the general journal or list of creditors. We decrease on the debit side. Remember, we are decreasing the credit side that is overstated. In other words, they recorded on the credit side, they recorded 6,750. So they recorded 6,750 on this side instead of 6,570. So this side is overstated. Then we reduce it on the debit side when it comes to the list of creditors. But in the ledger account, we reduce it under the same line item, total purchases. We just indicate it as a minus. Please be noteful of that. But in the list, we record it on the debit side. That is where we are debiting now the list or reducing the list. That was another one, and we could see that in here nothing was recorded in all the books, or everything was recorded incorrectly in the books of the company. And it did mention that in the books of the company, which is the list of creditors plus the creditors control, whenever they say in the books, they include both of those books. Number 3 says an amount of 1,820 has been transferred to check in via EFT. So this is a payment to our creditors. Let us check if we pay correctly. It says the transaction has not been recorded. The transaction has not been recorded in the books of the business where in the books of the business. Remember, the books of the business is creditors control ledger account and the list of creditors. So now that means we must record it in the books. Starting with this one, we have check-in, and also be mindful that this was a payment. So when we pay our creditors, where are they supposed to decrease? They're supposed to decrease on the debit side, 1,810.20. Then now we do the same thing in the ledger account, 1,810.20 decreases on the debit side. Remember, it's a payment. So if it's a payment, it is under bank end discount. If it's a payment, it's under bank end discount. So we need to add the 1,810.20 under our bank end discount. Then we can say 1,820 plus 30,800. I hope this one is done. We are sitting with 32,620 rand. Now I just want to bring your attention to the bank and discount. That bank and discount, that's where we record all the cash payment journal items. Why I'm saying that, remember where they said bank and discount, which journal was this coming from? Cash payment journal. And in this case, we have made, or we are making a payment, or a payment was made, but it was not recorded yet. So that's why now this will be a cash payment journal recording. That will go under bank and discount. And we continue to transaction number 4. That says a credit note. We know that a credit note indicates a return. Invoice indicate a purchase in the case of creditors reconciliation. A credit note received from Bombela Traders. If we receive credit note from a company or a supplier, that indicates that we have returned something to our supplier and our supplier accepted our return. And in this case, take note that it's not the same as this one. There's no refund here. There's no cash refund because we have not made a payment for what we bought before. Now we are returning. We bought something before on credit. Then after we are returning, and the supplier accepted our return and gave us evidence that this amount was the return. And the amount is 360 rand. Has not been recorded where? In the subsidiary journal. But it was posted in the year account or in their account in the creditors ledger. So that means their account being creditors ledger is the list of creditors. So that means in the list of creditors it was posted, but in the subsidiary journal it was not recorded or it was not posted. We know that when we record creditors control ledger account, we record it using the subsidiary journal. So now whenever a subsidiary journal was not recorded, that means now in this case the creditors ledger account will therefore need to be recorded of this entry. How much? This is 360, and obviously this is our total returns. I think we already had returns of some 4,000 something in that. There we have total returns, but these returns, they include the information that is below, which is the 360 that now we are taking into account. Let us just check in case there is perhaps another return that might surface along the way. So now we have recorded this. There is no recording of it under our list of creditors because it was already recorded in there. Then we come to number 5. Number 5 says Georgina was paid. If we pay, we know, brethren, that we pay in the cash payment journal. So now this is a CPJ item, and when we pay our creditor in the cash payment journal, the creditors decrease on the debit side. Be it is a list of creditors or be it is under creditors control. But when we pay our creditors, we expect them to decrease on the debit side. So now that means this transaction was correctly entered in the journal but not posted in the account of the creditors ledger. Once again, the same terminology that you see in the previous one. So now that means this will go under the list of creditors or under the creditors list. If in the journal it was posted but not recorded in the account of the creditor, that means it is a list of creditors. Remember, this was Georgina that was paid, an amount of 850 rands that was paid. So now where will this go? To the list of creditors. On which side? On the debit side. So now we need to say, Georgina, we must decrease your account. Decrease the account of Georgina with an R there. Georgina, we have paid Georgina 850. So the account of Georgina must decrease by 850 to indicate that we have made a payment to them. But creditors control is not affected because it was recorded, the transaction was correctly entered in the journal. I emphasize that we record from the journal to the creditors ledger account. So if the journal is correct, then the creditors ledger account will not be touched. It says a credit note. We know that a credit note indicates a return. A credit note is a return of how much? 250 received from YTT was recorded as a credit invoice. Remember, if it's a credit invoice, meaning it's a purchase, it's a credit purchase. So we recorded this as a credit purchase. So now it was recorded as a credit invoice, a credit invoice. Yet this was a credit note. The correct entry is that this is a return. So we recorded it as a purchase. And they say it was recorded as a credit invoice in the creditors ledger account. This transaction was correctly recorded in the subsidiary journal. It was recorded in the creditors ledger. So now that means the ledger account of the creditor called YTT. In terms of the subsidiary journal, it was all sorted. If the subsidiary journal is correct, that means the creditor's control ledger account was recorded correctly. So we are not going to touch our creditor's control ledger account. So this one was correct. We are only recording in the creditors ledger, which affect our list of creditors. This is YTT. Now let us look at how this error was made. So if it was recorded as a credit invoice, that means they increased our liabilities, or we increased our liabilities, which is the account of YTT was increased. Remember, a credit invoice is a buying on credit. When we buy on credit, we record on the credit side. So that means they must have recorded 250 here, and this was incorrect. So they recorded this return as if it's a purchase on credit. So the 250 on the credit side is the incorrect one, but it's the one that has been recorded. Now let us correct this. If we record 250 on this side, that will mean we have plus 250 and minus 250 is equal to 0. So there is nothing recorded. Therefore, now we do the actual recording. Then the actual recording will be another 250 on the debit side. That is why we just record 500. Whenever an amount is recorded on the wrong side, if I were to say so, whenever an amount is recorded on the wrong side, but the amount is correct but it's on the wrong side, always record it on the opposite side and double the amount. Whenever the amount is recorded on the wrong side, but the amount is correct, you just record it on the correct side, but you double the amount. So that's exactly what we did, because another 250 is cancelling the entry that was on the wrong side. Another one is the correct amount on the correct side. So we have recorded this one also correctly, reconciling the books of this inexperienced bookkeeper from a no-name university. Now, the total of the creditors' allowance journal was undercasted by how much? By 300. The total of what? Of the journal. Total of the journal. Creditors' allowance journal. So the minute the journal is incorrect, we correct the journal in the creditors' control account. So the amount is 300. They say it was undercasted, meaning it was less than it was supposed to be. So we need to increase our returns on the debit side of the creditors control. There is our total returns. Our total return are less by 300. So let us increase our total returns by 300. Then I think with this one now we are done. 4,800 plus 360 plus 300 rands. This gives us 5,460. We are sitting at 5,460 rands. This is our total returns. So with this one, then we can move to the next one. In some areas, I'm not making much emphasis and I'm not going to the subsidiary journals that I've recorded. I've done that several times. I think now you are quite familiar with this. Now it says no entry, that is now your transaction number 8. Transaction number 8, if I am moving well, we have covered all of them. We are now going to this entry where it says a total. Take note when they say a total all the time. Oh, we are done with this one. It says no entry has been made on the interest charged by Donalos on our overdue account of 25 rand. So now we can say that there is interest that need to be charged. If the interest is not charged, both the creditors list plus the creditors control ledger account, they are affected all the times, unless it were to be stated otherwise. But if they say interest must be charged, then we need to increase the account of our liabilities. So now the interest that is being charged goes to our total credits, your general credits, sorry. We are increasing the liabilities by an amount of 25 rand. We are increasing the account of the creditor because this creditor has billed us with interest. So there is your 25 rand. Then 25 rand plus 580 rand, that will give us 605. So this is the amount of the total general credits after this transaction. Then we move to the next one. The next one is the recording of the same transaction in the list of creditors. Then we record this in the list of creditors. That was Donatello's something, Donatello's. I think it was Donatello, and that will be on the credit side. Let me just verify the name. I think it was Donatello. There, the Donatello. The account of this creditor must be billed or charged with interest. And to charge a creditor with interest is increasing it on the credit side. Remember, we are owing them, so they are charging interest on our account. So we are increasing what we are owing them. The last one says an invoice now. An invoice that has been received. An invoice received from Upside for 4,285 was correctly entered in the subsidiary journal. The minute it is correctly entered in the subsidiary journal, that means creditors control ledger account was recorded correctly. So we are not recording it again. It was done perfectly. But it was posted incorrectly in the account of upside in the creditors ledger. Now in the account of upside, the minute they say in the account of the creditor, then that refers to the list of creditors. Now what this transaction was about is an invoice. We know that an invoice is when we buy on credit. Invoice, we buy on credit. And when we buy on credit, what happens to our liabilities? Our liabilities increase on the credit side. By how much? By 4,285. So we must record the 4,285, indicating that our creditors are increasing on the credit side by the amount of 4,285, which is our just upside. Let me just verify upside or ledger. It was recorded as 4,258. It's not the amount is correct, is incorrect. So upside for 4,285, it was recorded incorrectly as 4,258. So the error is in the amount in here. 4,285 minus 4,258. So the difference is 27 rand. Now let me just do a further analysis on that. The correct amount is 4,285, but we recorded 4,258. So now that means this amount is undercasted. This amount is undercasted. When you say undercasted, meaning is less than it was supposed to be. Or it was undercast by how much? By 27 rand. So now we need to increase it by 27 rand. The amount is recorded on the correct side. Take note of that. This amount of 4,285, which is supposed to be, but we recorded 4,258, is recorded on the correct side. So in this case, we have recorded 4,258 instead of 4,285. So now let us then do that one adjustment of 27 rand. And note that this was an invoice, meaning a credit purchase. So the credit purchase was undercasted. So now we just said plus 27 rand. The amount of the customer is upside, or the amount of the creditor, or the name of the creditor is upside. So that's all that we just needed to do. If I were just to give more details on this one, what we did, we recorded 4,258, and we're supposed to say plus 27 rand, so that the total of these two gets to 4,285. 4,285. 4,285. So it will be 4,285 in total. So what makes it to be 4,285 is the 27 rand that we are adding. We recorded an amount less than what was supposed to be. So that is just a short further explanation on that. That being the last transaction, I think we would have recorded and reconciled the books of this inexperienced bookkeeper. And after we have done our recording, all should be correct now. Then we inform this inexperienced bookkeeper of their error and show them the error that they have made, and the fact that we are bold to reconcile everything correctly for them. Then now let us then do the calculations. Credit side will always be bigger. 225, you just need to start with it, is 48,220 plus 605 plus 48,220, 48,220, or plus 8,330. Oh, we have 225 plus 48,220 plus 605 plus 8,330. That gives us 57,000. 57,000. Just verify with those calculations that I think I misstated. 8,330 plus 605 plus 48,220 plus 225. We have 57,377. I may verify that for the last time. Don't know which figure. 8,330 plus 605 plus 48,220. Oh, the plus is not adding in there. There is the plus. That 8,330 plus 605 plus 48,220 plus 225. That is 57,380 rand. 57,380 rand. We minus our debit side. 32,620 minus 5,460 minus 450. That is 18,850. That is 18,850. This gives us our balance. Our balance that is carried down. And that will be balance brought down. 18,850. Balance brought down. Then we come to our list of creditors. Again, credit side will be correct or will be bigger. 22,148 plus 25 plus 27. That is 22,200 rands. 22,200 rands. We minus the smaller side, which is the debit side, minus 180 rand, minus 1,820, minus 850, minus 500. That gives us a total of 18,850. This sounds familiar amount. Then we have our balance, which is carried down. The balance carried down is the 18,850. And this is the same as the 18,850. With those words, brethren, thank you very much. Hope you have understood something. And now you have the capability of obtaining maximum marks in these topics. Just note of these errors. I almost made a mistake there. Whenever an amount is overstated or understated, and the rest of this topic, as easy as is, please grab your maximum marks that will be allocated in this question. With these words, thank you very much.